This week, things start off with Irving sitting down on a bench and his dog is beside him. His Audi is just enjoying the day. Then he takes his dog back to the apartment and we see some of Irving's routine for the first time, which does not include sleeping. This could be why his innie falls asleep so often. He makes himself a coffee, then he starts to paint. He painted the hallway leading to the break room. This shows us that some of the memories are starting to merge together between his innie and his outie. He starts to paint something new while blasting rock music, and it just seems like he's really painting the same hallway over and over and over again. So Irving's outie, since he's not sleeping much, he spends his time thinking and his thoughts start to merge together. Then we see all of the refiners return to work, and they all have the same kind of sour look on their face. They all know that they can wake up with the overtime contingency, but that's all they can think about lately. It's taking up all the space in their heads. So we see them all get to work with their numbers, trying hard for everyone to finish their files. Helly's the last one, and Dylan is concerned she won't finish, since him and Irv finished a week ago. Irv thinks they should stand behind her and chant her name, but Mark says she'll make it, just let her focus. The refiners aren't the only people that are monitoring her progress, because Cobell and Milchek also are. It is very important for her to have a good quarter because things have been rough for Lumen lately. Cobell also wants to schedule one last wellness session for Mark before the quarter ends. Milchek shows concern about that decision, but Cobell says she imagines Kier would be very satisfied with the work that Milchek has done, encouraging him to just believe in her and have her back about this decision. Then Helly completes her file. The team congratulate her, and Irv says, so it's on now. Their plan of waking themselves up using the overtime contingency has come into play, and we'll find out more about that very soon. After completion, Mark is called into Cobell's office. She asks him who he wants to have the waffle party. He says Dylan. We, as an audience, know that they want Dylan to have the waffle party because he's the one who volunteered to stay back and wake the others up outside. But Cobell's pretty surprised to hear this. She thought that Mark would just pick himself, but she goes along with what Mark wants, and she says, okay, Dylan can get the waffle party. And she thanks Mark for the hard work, saying Lumen needed this. Mark shows up for his wellness session, and he's greeted by Miss Casey, whom we found out last episode is actually Mark's wife, who he thinks is dead. He asks why everything in her office is in boxes, and she tells him that she's retiring at the conclusion of this session. She says she just found out a moment ago. During the session, she tells Mark he successfully led his department to complete their task, which is why he was rewarded the wellness session. Miss Casey goes on to say that Mark's outie is kind. He brightens people's days merely by smiling. He makes time for people. But then Mark interrupts her and he says, let me talk to somebody. He thinks he can maybe save her job. She then breaks character as Miss Casey and starts to talk as a person. She tells Mark that she really enjoyed being in MDR's office that day. She says she knows that she's strange, but Mark cuts her off and says, you're not strange. But then we find out her life has only been 107 hours long. Most of that 107 hours has been split up between half-hour sessions. So she's typically only awake for 30 minutes at a time, and then who knows what happens to her. This being the case, her favorite memory was spending 8 hours at MDR monitoring Helly. It was the longest she'd ever been awake and calls it her good old days. Mark shows concern for this, and Miss Casey wonders why Mark even cares what happens to her. But then we see Miss Cobell has been and is watching their session. Mark then answers Miss Casey's question saying, because this is our lives. No one gets to just turn you off. She calls Mark nice, and she seems to really like what he's saying to her right now. Cobell kind of gasps. She's taken back by this, wondering if they are starting to recognize each other. But then Miss Casey just continues with the wellness session. Milchek says, it's a good thing that they don't remember each other, right? It means the chips work. It's a win. Then we see Milchek is escorting Miss Casey to a hallway leading to an area I presume to be the area on the map that PD marked off as people live here, because she just walks down a random dark hallway and gets into an elevator. And if most of her life is in half-hour sessions, she probably is just going to be stored somewhere. But what do you guys think is going on with Miss Casey? Let me know in the comments. Mark tells the group that Miss Casey has been fired, and they all wonder if there's anything they can do. But then Milchek walks in and says Dylan's waffle party will commence at the end of their shift. And in the meantime, he has a pre-waffle party egg bar social for everyone to enjoy. But before they begin, Dylan is handed a gift from Mr. Milchek. They all wonder what the prize is, so he opens it up, but we as the audience do not see what this gift is at this point in time. We only see their reactions as they all surround him and thank him. The egg bar social begins. Dylan tells Helly the egg bar is coveted as fuck, as Milchek continues to take photos of MDR as he's done the whole season. Helly says to Dylan that she should be the one to stay back, but Dylan says no, and that what they are doing tonight is just the first step. He assures her he wants to be the one to stay. Then we see Natalie shows up to Miss Cobell's office, and she has pictures of Helly's suicide attempt. She says, "How could you not tell us?" Cobell wonders if Milchick ratted her out, but all that Natalie and the board care about is why she would hold back Helly's suicide attempt from them. She also calls Miss Cobell out for spending so much time with Devin, Mark's sister. They tell her she is fired and she has to leave immediately. She says, "Fuck that, is the board even there?" And for the first time all season, they speak, saying yes. She apologizes, takes down her aggressiveness, and says she can explain everything tonight at the Egan's annual party. They all say it's too late. They made their decision. She's fired. Back at MDR, Helly asks Mark if he is scared about tonight. Helly tries to calm Mark by saying that they won't see anything coming. But then Mark says, "Or we won't wake up," meaning that their innies are in danger of never waking up again because they know too much. If they're caught in action, there's a good chance that their innies will never wake up again. Mark is scared he will wake up and realize he has too many things to care about, giving him something to lose. This kind of mirrors his outie in the reason that he took the job in the first place. Helly and Mark share a nice moment together, letting them know that they both care about each other. Then Milchick comes in and says there has been a problem, which is Miss Cobell getting fired, and that the egg bar social is over. So everyone needs to leave except Dylan, who is going to get his waffle party. Milchick says he'll be right back, and then he goes to escort Miss Cobell to the elevator, and he asks for her key card. Pretty cold, Milchick. Then Mark and Helly talk to Dylan one last time to make sure he has everything he needs to complete the plan. Mark tells them all to be ready for anything as they go up the elevator, since they will immediately wake up outside to their perspective. Mark admits that he had kept Rickon's book, and he reads a section from the book to pump everyone up. But while he's reading it, Dylan completes the line, showing that he knew where it was, as we saw in an earlier episode, and he was reading it and putting it back little by little. So it's a nice bonding moment before they start this mission. Irv then gets in the elevator and says, "Okay, kids, let's find out what's for dinner." And Irv is gone. Now it's just Helly and Mark talking by the elevator, waiting to leave. Helly wonders if they will meet their spouses, or that maybe they're married to each other. She gets in the elevator, but before the doors close, she stops it and runs out to kiss Mark. She says, "In case we don't come back," or I don't know, in case we do. She then says, "Good luck out there, boss," and leaves. Mark then takes one last look around the office before getting on the elevator. Dylan is reading the instructions of the overtime contingency over and over again, trying to memorize it as much as he can. He's in the bathroom stall when Milchick walks in. He then gets out and heads to the waffle party. Milchick then walks Dylan to the perpetuity wing and goes all the way to the back to Keir Egan's replica house. Dylan is now by himself, and he walks inside to see 3 waffles set on a table. He takes a seat, pours syrup on the waffles, and starts to eat. Then we see Cobell in her car cursing Lumen for firing her on her way home, especially Natalie. She's not a fan of her at the moment. She's really torn up about this because Lumen was her life. Flashback to Dylan. He finishes his waffles, and there's a message on the plate that he was eating off of. It says, "Go to Keir's bed." He goes to the bed and then puts a mask of Keir on before laying down. Then, lying on the bed with his mask on, female dancers come on with a various assortment of outfits and masks, including someone dressed up as a bride. And then they all do some sort of dance that looks and feels ritualistic. While this scene is happening, they transition back and forth to Dylan and to Miss Cobell, who is tearing her house apart. She breaks things, she rips things off the wall, and then she destroys what looks to be a shrine of her late husband. Dylan leaves Keir's house and heads to the security room, and no one's watching over him at the time, so he's all on his own. Mark shows up to Mrs. Selvig, aka Cobell's house, and says, "Hey, sorry to just pop over, but I'm heading to Devin and Rickon's, and I was told to double check to see if you're coming." She says, "Sorry, I'm not. I'm just not feeling myself this evening, Mark." Then, before he leaves, she has the change of heart saying, "Maybe I can drive my own car. That way I can leave if I'm uncomfortable." He says, "Yeah, that's great. I'll see you there." Mark shows up to Rickon's and he says he doesn't have the book for the book reading. Rickon then says, "You don't need to drive all the way home unless you want to." Then he says Rebecca, someone in the audience, might be willing to share hers, but he should ask her or she might be offended. Mark then tells Devin that they should talk later because he is considering a pretty decent-sized life change. Miss Selvig / Cobell then shows up. Back to Dylan. He uses Mr. Grainer's key card to access the security room to continue his plan. Irving is painting, hopped up on caffeine per usual. Mark is talking with Mrs. Selvig, and he said he's glad that she's there and he tries to cheer her up. Dylan then ties the door shut to buy himself some extra time when security finds out what he's doing. He then enters all the prompts from the directions of the overtime contingency in the manual. He types all their names up and he gets a countdown warning to finish the prompts. He does so. We flash to Mark and Cobell speaking. She is wondering about his life change. He says he's thinking he might quit Lumen. He says he's not sure he even needs Severance anymore. She hugs him and seemingly looks very happy for him in the moment. Back to Dylan, man on a mission. He reaches for both levers, one with the left hand, one with the right hand, which is why two people are typically needed to do the overtime contingency. He manages to get a hand on each of them and pull both levers. This wakes up Irving, Helly, and Mark to close the episode. And in the little flash we got to see with Helly, she's all dialed up for a special occasion, which we find out exactly what it is next episode, the season finale.